is telling your story with maps. This is an introduction to StoryMap.js, which is an open source multimedia mapping tool. StoryMaps is a great way to tell your research story and provide geographical context for your events. In choosing events, you're going to have to reflect on which are the most important and which are the least important events in your story. You'll need to pick and choose. When you do this, you're describing your events in a way that connect in order to help you tell a story to your audience. Maps provide visual interest, and story maps can incorporate various kinds of media like YouTube, Flickr, SoundCloud, and more. Map stories are informative, they're educational, and they're entertaining. And once you're done with them, you can embed them into programs like Omeka, WordPress, and a host of other places where you can show your work on the internet. When you're done with this tutorial, you'll be able to make a story map like the one that you see on the screen. This story map documents Gandhi's Great Salt March in 1930. The Great Salt March took place between the 12th of March and the 6th of April in 1930 in India. The Salt Satyagraha was an act of civil disobedience led by Mohandas Gandhi, sometimes referred to as Mahatma Gandhi, to protest British colonial rule in India. The British had imposed a tax on salt, which is widely used by Indians. It was illegal to even gather salt from the sea under colonial rule. British colonial law severely increased salt taxes and created a salt monopoly for the British, rendering India's poor unable to afford this vital resource. In this act of civil disobedience, Gandhi and his followers marched 240 miles to the sea, where they gathered salt and were subsequently arrested. In order to use StoryMap, you will need to navigate to storymap.knightlab.com. Here's their front page, and there's a big green button that says Make a Story Map. You click on that, and you'll need to have a Google account in order to use StoryMap. You should already have one. If you're a student or faculty at CI, you click on Sign In with Google, and after some sign-in magic, we're ready to go. We're going to give our new story map a name. Then click Create. And there you go, we're ready to story map. Now, before we get into building our story map, let's just think about a few design principles. First of all, you want to keep your story fairly short. We recommend not having more than 20 slides for a reader to click through. You're going to want to choose some stories that have strong location narratives. If the story is jumping around in geographic space, it's going to make it hard to follow. That's why the Salt March is a good case study, because the march begins at point A and ends at point B for the most part, and we can see it as it progresses through the country. Each of the stops along the Salt March has a narrative that's associated with it, but it's all leading up to that final act of disobedience. So each of the minor stops along the way is adding to the story of the ultimate act of disobedience. And as we create each of the stops along the way, we're going to want to pull in pictures, video, anything else that we can think of that might give the person who's watching the presentation a better idea of what was going on. Let's take a look at the title slide. What I want to do is point out some of the features of this slide, because we're going to talk about how to achieve each of the things that we see here. The first thing to notice over on the left is the map. This is our starting place where the Salt March began. And I've chosen to use this sort of watercolor looking background because I think it gives it a little bit more of an artistic feel than a street map would. I've done a couple of things here. This is one of our points on the map, and I've made a custom marker here. All I did was I got an illustration of the Indian flag, cropped out the middle part, which represents a spinning wheel. It's an important piece of imagery that's associated with Gandhi, and created a JPEG and created a custom marker. So we'll see how to do that. The default marker down here is this gray marker, and it shows the YouTube logo in the middle, indicating that there's a YouTube video that's associated with this particular point. Over on the right, you'll see that there's an antique map of India in the background. I thought that this would give the slide a little bit more of an interesting feel to it. I'll show you how to put in and adjust this background. There is a photo that I borrowed from history.com, and you can see I credited it there. So we'll see how to upload a photo, how to put in that credit. I've created a caption here that explains what this is. Then down here we have the description. So we know this is the title, The Great Salt March, 1930, and a short description. And down here I've done a couple of things that are really neat. One is to take a term that maybe a lot of your audience isn't going to know and referenced it to a Wikipedia entry that gives an explanation of what Satyagraha is. Also, I have another link that I put in here that takes you to a video that covers the life of Mahatma Gandhi in short order, so people can get a little bit of background. And then finally there's this button down here which is going to start our journey, and there's a default message that goes in here, but I decided, since this was about a march, that we would put in the words "Begin the March," and that would be the first slide. So let's see how to do all these things. So here we are in StoryMaps, and I'd like to first point out that there are two tabs up here, Preview and Edit. Preview will give you a sense of what your slide is going to look like once you're finished. When you're on preview mode, you can save, but you won't be able to click any of these options. So if you are having problems accessing options, be sure to check that you're in edit mode. Edit mode is where all of the work gets done. And so we want to talk first about the map, and you can access the map style in options along with several other things. You'll remember that I changed the default font, so this is the way that it would come up for you at first. I changed the default font in order to get a different look. here's where I changed that button. Remember, I told you there was a default message. The default message is start exploring. If you don't put anything in here, then it'll just say start exploring. I decided that I wanted begin the march, and so I put in begin the march. You can also choose your map type. Remember, I chose that watercolor map because I thought it looked a little bit more interesting, but you could choose a map type like this. You can play around with that and decide what you think is best for your particular project. So I'm going to go back to my watercolor style and close that. And here's where we'll be. So I've already done some things here. This is, the complete thing that I showed you, the back end of it. And I didn't want you to watch me type a bunch of stuff. So let's just step through each of the things that you're going to do in order to customize your slide. The first thing is, remember that image from the title slide? There it is. You can see it in preview. What you're going to do to get an image there is click Upload Image and then choose your file. And so there's my file. I would click on that, click Open, and my file would be uploaded to Knightlab. So they're holding on to that in order to make this work. Here's where I'm going to put in the credit. So I got this photo from history.com. I'm giving them credit for hosting the photo. Down here in the caption area, we have an explanation of what this is. This is a monument that's located in New Delhi and showing a scene from the Salt March. One thing you'll notice down here is that it says accepts HTML. That means that you can write HTML code in this box if you want to achieve some effect. Over here is where the title goes. So put in the title, you remember that. Here's where I made that link to Wikipedia. And the way to do that is simple. You highlight the text that you want, click on the link button, and this will help you to insert an HTML link. You can also do it by way of actually writing the HTML code, which sometimes can be a useful thing. Down here in the right, you'll see background options. This is how I got the antique map of India into the StoryMap. So it's the same sort of thing that we did with the media image over here, is that I had my map, I chose it, hit open, and uploaded it to Knightlab, and then it becomes part of the background. Now, you might not want to have a background image. You might want to have a background color instead, or actually you can have both at the same time. And the way to change the background color is to simply come up here, find the color that you want using this slider number 1. So if you want blue, or into the greens, yellow, orange, so you can choose sort of what color class you want. Then just click on the color that you want, and that will create a solid color background. Now, I already have an image there, so I want to show you what this is going to look like. So you can see it put that sort of purple color, sort of a purple overlayer over this photo that I'm using as a background. So you have some flexibility there in terms of what it is that you want to do. Back to edit, background options, and in order to get rid of this, I just get rid of it. Now, as you go from slide to slide, your background image is not going to stay with you. So you can have different background images on each slide, or if you want to use the same one on every slide, you just click this little downward arrow here. Mine was called India Wide, and I would click on that. That way you don't have to upload for every single slide you're going to go through. Now that we have our title slide complete, we're going to want to make a series of points for our presentation. The way that you add a slide is to simply click Add a Slide. And if you want to reorder your slides, you just click, hold, and move them around, and you can get them in any order that you want to. So you're not making a big investment when it comes to the order of slides. That can easily be changed, and if you've created a slide that you don't want, then you can just click on this little X right here. It'll ask you if you want to delete it. Yes, I do, and it's gone. So let's take a look at the first slide here to see what we can do with this. Or actually, let's go to the second slide. So here's the second slide, and the reason that I chose to go here first was because what I've done, instead of putting a picture in at this point, I have put in a YouTube video clip. It's a video clip of Gandhi in India and then in England from the 1930s. I found this on YouTube, and you can put video in quite easily by simply putting in the link from YouTube. One of the most important things is wherever you're getting your video from, if it is not a secure website, that's the HTTPS, then StoryMaps won't put it into the presentation. So getting stuff from YouTube is probably one of your better choices. Remember this accepts HTML button down here? Well, it has some nice features to it, especially for this box here, is that if you want to, say, have bold text or italics text, or you want to put in a hyperlink tag, you could just simply do this. I'm going to copy that, get rid of it. Now let's say that I wanted the word film to be in bold. I can paste that back in, take the word film, drag it between the two. So B says put this word in bold, and the \B says stop bolding stuff. So those are a couple of nice features, and you don't have to know how to write the code. You can just click on that button, steal the code, and then fit it in wherever it is that you want it. Over here in the discussion of this day within the Salt March, something that I did to help my users learn a little bit more, at this particular stop, Gandhi gave a speech to about 4,000 people. And so what I've done is I have linked that the text of that speech so that my audience can take a look at it. So here we are back in preview mode. You'll see here's my linked, and there's the text of the speech. In fact, this is quite a nice website that has his speeches at a number of these different stops. So you can do that in edit mode, as I said, either by way of highlighting the text and then using the link button. And if for some reason that doesn't work, you know how to do the HTML. You would just go over here, and let's say you want a link, copy that, okay, and then put it over here, wherever it is that you want it, paste it in, and then right here where it says insert URL, that's where you would put the link to the page that you want people to go to if they choose to do that. So I will get rid of that, and we will move on. Once I have put in all of the data for each of the stops during the Salt March, we're back on the front page, and you can see where all of the points are, and a user can click on an individual point or can use the right and then right left to move back and forth within your story map. You should be ready to make your own story map. Thanks for listening.